2024 was the year that Slop flopped, and the radical leftists within the industry have been coping and seething over the fact that time after time, we prove the modern audiences don't exist and that companies are making titles for literally nobody. And now there is a comprehensive list of games that flopped this year and all of the teams that were disbanded and all of the layoffs, and it just shows that companies need to start listening to real gamers again. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, over the past couple of years, I've been talking about censorship in the video game industry. I have been talking about fans being let down when their favorite franchises are being modernized, and there are quite a few games on this list that I'm actually sad failed because I wanted them to be great. I wanted the developers to put real time and effort into these titles, but there was no saving them once they really started down the activist path, hiring activists, and these people push their own personal political opinions into these pieces. And at the end of 2022, it all started getting really bad with the Saints Row reboot. Oh my god, that was such a massive failure. Volition, a 30-year-old company, had to be shut down because it lost them so much money. Gotham Knights was really a sign of what was to come with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And that's when Sweet Baby Inc., in my opinion, started kind of getting a little bit of attention, not as much as in the beginning of 2024, but it was a SBI game and it was a flop. And then 2023, there was not a gigantic amount of games that were really bad, but there were a few really heavy hitters like Forspoken. Black Girl Gamers was the consultancy group on that title. You had games like Redfall coming out and failing. Consequence was a studio closure. Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew came out. Sweet Baby Inc. was a consultant, and it led to a studio closure. And then Allan Wake 2 is really when people started paying attention to Sweet Baby Inc. and Hit Detection and just narrative consultant companies in totality, because when you play the first game, it's very ominous. It's very creepy. It is a little bit complex. There's a lot of moving parts, but by the end of the experience, you're satisfied with sinking your time into it. But Allan Wake 2 was a complete 180. It was totally different. You were not playing as Alan half the time, and even though, of course, the other lead character ends up helping him along and saving him, Saga still didn't do it for me and a lot of people. I was very disappointed, but this is again when people really started paying attention to SBI, and then we get into 2024 and it's failure after failure after failure, and it's hilarious to see. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown was Ubisoft. That came out, and while people did actually not hate this game, it was overshadowed by Pal World, and the team ended up being disbanded for this. I still have not played it. I do want to give it a shot. I did watch quite a lot of gameplay, though, and it didn't really seem like anything too special. And when people have been waiting for the Sands of Time to come out, it feels like we've been waiting for 50 years at this point. It just was a disappointment for people. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League was my worst game of the year because while there were titles like Dustborn and Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn and Concord that came out, I didn't have a connection emotionally to those worlds and to those characters and to those stories. And with KTJL, we are talking about them desecrating the Arkhamverse, one of the best quadrilogies of games to ever come out. I absolutely love those titles, some of my favorite games of all time. And when this is the last Batman experience we're going to get from someone like Kevin Conroy, and the last time we're going to really have the team together, I really wanted them to at least make a really great experience. Obviously, it's called Kill the Justice League, so the Justice League was going to die, though I was personally hoping that they would have kept Batman away from the rest of the Justice League. And then by the end, you have like Superman, and Batman has to help save Superman and, you know, put an end to the madness that's going on. But that was not the case. I personally think the game would have been way, way better if the roles were reversed with Wonder Woman and Batman, but that's not the direction they went in. And a big reason why is because of Sweet Baby Inc. I know the mainstream media loves to try to tell you Sweet Baby Inc. doesn't do what you think they do, but they do exactly what you think they do. Why would a company be hired to do nothing? That's just not the reality of the world. Let's say, for argument's sake, they got $50,000. A company is not going to hire them just to throw away $50K. It's not realistic at all whatsoever. And KTJL came out, there were mass layoffs, and it is the biggest Sweet Baby Inc. failure at this point in time. Allan Wake 2's close because it still has not made back its budget, but KTJL lost over $200 million, and they basically killed the Arkhamverse with this game. Banishers, Ghosts of New Eden, the studio went through major layoffs. This did not have any sort of narrative consultation company behind it, and it wasn't really a game that got a lot of attention, so I can't really say that I'm shocked. Again, the industry is going through major problems right now and major layoffs, but there are still opportunities for companies to make amazing games and to get a lot of attention, and it just wasn't the case with them. Skull and Bones was a gigantic failure, a quadruple A failure. Tales of Kenzera Zhao, Sweet Baby Inc. did consult. The studio actually ended up closing. And what's crazy is that Abu Bakr Salim, the director behind this game, and kind of the creative mastermind behind it, he has been handed a bunch of opportunities within the mainstream industry. He's gone to the Game Awards. He's gotten to present awards. It just seems he's being handed a lot of opportunities, even though he didn't create a very successful game. It is what it is. You'd think, though, that with that much industry support, this wouldn't have had to happen. Homeworld 3 came out and it went through layoffs. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 came out. We didn't hear about any layoffs, but it was a Game Pass Day 1 title. It got raked across the coals. And again, very disappointing. Capes, consultant Sweet Baby Inc. The development studio initially tried to hide the SBI partnership, and then they started banning people from the Steam forum. They tried to silence gamers, and it blew up in their face. The Streisand effect most certainly occurred. Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn, consultant Sweet Baby, and consequence, massive layoffs. This was such an awful experience, and the rest of the games on this list are awful. Dustborn, Concord, Star Wars Outlaws, Unknown 9 Awakening, Life is Strange, Double Exposure, and Dragon Age the Veilguard. All of these games deserve to fail, at least in my opinion, because while, yes, these games could exist, that doesn't mean that I'm going to support them and I'm going to sit here and say, oh my god, at least the developers tried. No, they tried and they completely fucking failed, and this is what happens when you don't actually make a game for gamers. This is what happens when you make a title for the modern audiences, aka sensitive snowflakes on social media, because they do not buy video games, and we're gonna see this trend for years to come. I do think eventually the gaming industry will turn things around, but development cycles are so long now that it's going to be years. Look at Star Wars Eclipse, for example. That's not supposed to come out until 2027, and we first got the announcement in 2021. That's a massive cycle, so maybe by 2030, the industry will have rapidly changed, but I just don't see that happening anytime soon, and I think that 2025 is probably going to be just as worse because there are so many companies who are still working with SBI. We're seeing companies pump out as many products as possible. We've got Avowed, we've got Assassin's Creed Shadows. It's going to be a massive year for games and for gamers to prove that they have a voice, that they are willing to speak with their wallets, that they are willing to walk away from games where developers and art directors say they want to kick crusty white dudes out of the industry and they just made a game in order to piss people off. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on the games that come out 2025, but 2024 was a massive year for gamers to prove that they are willing to speak up and defend themselves, but also We saw some of the worst flops in the history of the video game industry with titles like Concord. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.